Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Papa Tom's Take. As you can see, my beard has been tamed, so it's after Christmas. I was hoping to get this episode recorded before the end of 2025, but I didn't succeed. It's early in 2026. The title of this episode is Why You, the letters Y, the letter U, woke. And I did a paraphrase in that title from a question that a MAGA friend of mine, yes, I do have MAGA friends, a MAGA friend of mine asked me one time a few months ago. His question was, why are you so woke? And at that time, I answered that question kind of in a short way and said, well, it's because of the way I was brought up. Um, and that's certainly part of it. But since then, I've thought more deeply about it. And I've prepared some notes for this because I want to make a comparison here at the beginning. And then towards the end, I'll actually answer his question in much more detail. First of all, I went to the Oxford English Dictionary for a definition, and the definition was well informed, up to date, alert to racial and social discrimination and injustice. And that definition felt pretty good to me, and it led me then to suggest that from a liberal standpoint, a liberal and progressive standpoint, being woke is generally a positive thing. And the traits run parallel to many of the liberal and progressive ideas in terms of social issues and politics. I consulted my chatbot, and it came up with several components of woke that would be viewed as appropriate from a liberal standpoint. And those are social awareness, understanding of systematic inequality such as racism, sexism, and economic injustice. The second one is empathy, simply having feelings for marginalized groups or groups that are other than yourself. Self-reflection, acknowledging one's own biases and prejudices, and we all have them. A few years ago, I actually kind of balked at the demand of a university for me to take this training that looked at implicit biases, because I thought I don't really have any biases. And it was really quite eye-opening because it asked some questions that made you assess really what you thought about different situations. Advocacy is another component where you stand up and for others, you stand up for causes, you want you move, you are attracted to policies that provide equal opportunities for people, and you use inclusive language. The last is environmental and global consciousness. For years and years and years, I taught environmental science, and as part of that, we always talked about issues that were on the border between scientific and social regarding the environment. One of the reasons why I think my friend had kind of a disdain for wokeness was that he was working from a different set of understandings. And I hope that's the case, because knowing him like I do, I find it hard to believe that at least many of those liberal interpretations of woke he would align with. But from a MAGA person who spends most of the time in Fox News and other kinds of venues, woke would appear in a different way. And some of those things are ideologically rigid. People, they believe that people who are woke enforce rigid discussions and aren't open to dissent, which it kind of blows my mind that that would be one of the things. Virtual signaling. They believe that woke people are basically fakes. We say things about equality and inclusion and so forth, but when the rubber hits the road, we don't really believe it. They believe that woke ideas are a threat to traditional values. And again, it blows my mind that this would be part of that point of view, because they think that wokeism would depress free exchange of ideas, free speech. And for me, that would be one of the hallmarks. And the last thing is that overreach of institutions trying to get government and schools and so forth to embrace left-wing agenda. Now, I can, as I said before, I can understand if my friend is working from that set of ideas of wokeness, that he would have the question as how I could be so woke. Although I reject those as really my understanding of woke. I'm under the list of characteristics for liberals and progressives. I'm proud to say, call myself woke. I believe in those bullet points that I just went over for you. But then the question is that my friend poses: how did I get to be so woke? And I think, in a lot of ways, my answer was the right answer. It had to do with how I was brought up. I don't believe somebody is born woke or not woke, although that's probably a silly statement. But it's your lived experiences that allow you to have this awareness that aligns with some of the woke characteristics that I just read off to you. Certainly, education plays a role, and it played a role for me. I don't know this to be true, but for example, P47 has said on more occasions that the smart people don't like him. So maybe just the fact of education broadening your experiences would help enlighten you to some of the more woke characteristics. But specifically, I can point to an interesting phenomenon in terms of education. During our freshman orientation at Towson State College, then Towson University now, we had a full week of orientation. And during that week, we had various activities. Some were social and some were intellectual. And prior to that, we were told to read one of two books, either John Griffin's Black Like Me or James Baldwin, The Fire Next Time. So actually, I read both of them because I was afraid not to. I didn't want to be faced with the situation where I would have to talk about something in a class or whatever, and had no idea what the book was about. So I read both of them. But my actual point is that someone at Towson at that time picked those two books, which were inclusive, which were about race in the United States, and had every freshman who came in was supposed to read it. Now, I would guess that some didn't, but that set the stage for the fact that the education at Towson was going to be one of inclusion, and so the notion of racial bias or sexist bias or age bias or whatever was going to be something that Towson was going to fight against. So that's a very specific example. Through my coursework in education, I think that I probably had some subliminal things happen. But the next experience related to education was me as an educator. My first teaching position was at Catonsville Junior High School in Baltimore County. And at that time, Catonsville was undergoing demographic shifts. And so there were three distinct student there was three distinct student populations at the school at that time. There were fairly affluent, middle class, mostly white children. There was a community near the junior high school of fairly poor, mostly white children. And then there was a population of mostly black children. So there were three distinct populations, and the students mixed to some extent and didn't mix for other extents. In fact, we did have some racial conflicts going on between kids that was an issue with the school, but that's not the point of me bringing it up here. The point is that in my classroom, I had these three populations, and so it helped me understand how to be inclusive, how to present things that were more culturally understandable by these three different groups. So that life experience of teaching in that junior high school really also opened my eyes to the notion of inclusion. Oh my God, I'm sorry, inclusion. One of the things at that time, however, that the school system did was the children were grouped in sections based on test scores or previous grades or whatever. And so there was one group that was, from a standpoint of intellectual ability, judged to be one of was at the bottom of the ranking. Every year I taught that group, and every year the experience was very positive for me, and I hope very positive for the students. So I'm kind of babbling on about this one experience, but I think having experiences as a teacher or a professor with students of different races and different cultural backgrounds helps you be more open to including different points of view and different cultural backgrounds. So that's education. In point of fact, I didn't grow up in a very diverse environment. My community was lily white. My elementary school, to my memory, was lily white. When we moved, when I went to the junior high school, that was about the time that state of Maryland integrated the schools. I remember very well that we had a goodly number of African American students in the class for the first time. And I remember very well my parents, before I started the seventh grade, my parents sat me down and they said, now for the first time you're going to have, they actually at the time probably said colored, you're going to have black students in your school. And we want you to treat them just the same as you treat any other students. They did say, I will admit, and this kind of always stuck in the back of my mind, we hope that you don't, that none of, that the black students are not, turn out to be your best friends, but we want you to treat them with respect and not say bad things or act badly around them. And I didn't. And I treated, my memory is I treated the black students that I had experience with the same as non-black students. I will say that although it was not conscious on my part, at least as I think back it wasn't, none of the black students became my best friends or in any way. I had experience with the black athletes on the teams that I belonged to. And again, they, in my mind, they were no different on a personal level than the white teammates. But so that was kind of, again, I didn't come from a very diverse background, but as I grew older, I was exposed more to different cultures and different races. Personal experiences played a role, and I'm going to briefly tell you about two. What two? The first one is that a friend of mine, Earl, had Holstein cattle, and every year he took the cattle to the county fair, and there they washed the cows, and they did all kinds of things. And the cows stayed there overnight, and they prepared them for show, and they walked around the arena, and they were judged and so forth. And so Earl, being at that time probably my best friend, I stayed there for the week and slept in the barn with him and helped him prepare the cows for show and so forth. I was about probably 12 or 13 at the time. And I remember one morning waking up and headed for the bathroom. And at that time, in Hagerstown at least, there were colored bathrooms and there were white bathrooms. There were colored water fountains and there were white water fountains. And so where we were sleeping in the barn, the closest restroom was a colored restroom. And so early in the morning, I got up and ran into the colored men's restroom and used it. And on my way out, I was met by a white man, older white man, and he berated me severely for using the colored restroom. That didn't I know that the races need to be separate and so on. And while I don't remember the words that he said, I do remember the fervor by which they were delivered, and I was clearly reprimanded. The other example, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because it's a little more personal than I would like to share, but I had an experience with a group of churchgoers. And this was at the time when Martin Luther King was leading his marches and so forth. And these churchgoers went to an all-white church. And so I asked them, would they welcome a black family into their church? And after a fairly long pause, the best they could come up with was that they wouldn't they wouldn't try to get a black family into their church. But if they came, they wouldn't do anything to run them off, which seemed to me to be a little bit out of whack with the Christian view. And that leads me to the religious and moral experience. It's kind of a transition. I was raised in a Lutheran family, and we went to church every Sunday, and we did all the things that that a good church family would do back in the 50s and 60s. And that, and I went to Sunday school, and I don't pretend to be a biblical scholar in any way, but the lessons that I took from that were lessons of love and inclusion and treating strangers well and taking care of the needy and so forth. And all of those traits, which I attribute to a Christian background, perfectly align with the liberal view of being woke. So part of the answer to the question to my friend has to be, the reason I'm woke is because even though I don't really consider myself a traditional Christian at this point in my life, I have a Christian background, and it's hard for me to understand that anyone who has that background or professes to be a Christian shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't also label themselves as woke. So again, I don't ever question anybody's religious beliefs. I think that's personal or whatever. But for me, the two go together. If you have that Christian background, those Christian beliefs, then the definition of woke that is supported by liberal thinking, they go hand in hand. So you can't be Christian without being woke, and but you can be woke without being Christian. The last thing I'm going to list is activism. And throughout my life, I've been, I would say, stand on the sidelines, kind of not real active activist. As I've gotten retired, and partly because of my view of P47's administration and the way he's treating people and the way he talks about people and so forth, that I'm becoming much more of an activist. I did march in the March for Our Lives march in Washington, D.C., happened, which was a gun violence march. And I participated in those kinds of things here. So insofar as being woke means that you have to take action, I have been doing that. I do this podcast. I post on Facebook. I think the one thing I have overlooked and need to go back to is when you look at life experiences, one of the things I learned from my father had life boiled down to several very simple rules that he tried to live up to. And his number one rule was the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That rule is woke. And every day I try to honor my father's memory by living up to that rule. I often fall way short. I know that. But every day that's a goal for me. And one of the other life experiences that I think contributes to why I'm woke is that, and this is kind of crazy, it's a song, Walk a Mile in My Shoes. And that song is so true. Until you really have lived somebody else's experience, you can't really judge them. You can't really discount their reality. So those two life experiences, if you will, I think contribute to it significantly. So that's my answer to my friend's question, why I'm woke. I suspect that my friend will never watch this podcast, so he'll never get that detailed of an answer. But I felt like his question motivated me to produce a podcast to answer that question. And I'd like all of you who consider yourselves woke to think about that. Why are you woke? How did you get to be woke? And I think your answers could be very similar to mine. Your experiences will be different, but the answer will be the same. So in closing this podcast, I've chosen a quotation from James Baldwin. Actually, I'd mentioned him earlier with regard to the book Fire Next Time. But his quote says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced." So we have to face inequality. We have to face racism. We have to face sexism. We have to face prejudice against different cultures and religions before we can really make any changes to unify those differences and not have those differences turn into prejudices. Again, I thank you for listening to episode 12. And I guess since it's early in the new year, I can still wish this Happy New Year. 2026 is an important, critical in my mind, election year. I'm hoping for a blue wave across the nation, and I, for one, am working, volunteering, donating to try to make that happen here in Ohio. And I hope if you've watched this podcast, you will do the same wherever you live. Again, thank you very much and take care.